Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Exponential Show. A huge shout out to our friends at Base Studio for hosting us at their new location in Thonglo. Make sure to check it out. My guest for today technically needs no introduction, especially in the startup field, but I'll do it nevertheless. Today we have with us Tiwa York. He is an angel investor, a board member at Seekster, at Seven Peaks. He's a serial entrepreneur himself. But most importantly, in my eyes, you are one of the most accessible thought leaders in our community. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me, Mayank. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure's all mine. Let's jump straight into it.
Sure.
I mentioned that you're a serial entrepreneur. You've been there, done that in lots of different verticals by now. So can you walk us through your origin story of how you got into entrepreneurship and how you've navigated the journey so far?
Sure. We actually have to go all the way back to the late 90s. So I was hired by a startup out of Portland, Oregon. Back in 96, I went to work for them as a 110th employee. And so worked in a couple different roles in that company, from third-tier customer service and also product management. Now, I left that company in 2000, came on vacation to Thailand, and I was supposed to travel around the world. So the original goal was 16 countries in 10 months, and I ended up meeting my wife, and so I never left Thailand. And so I ended up doing 2 countries in 23 years now so far, and stuck around in Thailand. And then my entrepreneur journey in Thailand really started in 2004 when I met a few gentlemen, one by the name of Paul Siwarakun and his brother John Stevens. So they had a small little company that they were doing a startup in the digital advertising space. They asked me to join, help them build that company. Out of that, we built several companies. So in that case, I'd say I'm part of the founding team. We built up, at that time, the largest digital agency in Thailand, and we grew that across Southeast Asia. We also built up the first ad network in Southeast Asia. And then we also had other businesses like a performance marketing company called Syndicast. So we built those up over time. Then in 2010, I decided, you know what, I kind of had my fill of doing that world. And so I left the company, and then I did a very short stint of building out the digital capabilities for Omnicom Media Group here in Thailand. And then I got hired in by the board of directors for a group of companies that had to do with Sanook Thailand and also some other e-commerce companies to clean up their e-commerce portfolio in Thailand. And when I took on that role, we started what eventually became Kaidi.com. Nice. It started its whole life. In the beginning, it started out as Dealfish, and then it changed its name to OLX. So we were part of the greater OLX globally, which has presence in, I don't know how many countries now. And then eventually we became Kaidi. In 2018, I MBO'd the company, and that means management buyout. So I organized to buy out the company, and we purchased the company, and then in 2020, we sold the company. And so I've been unemployed since 2020. But in terms of my startup angel investing, I've been angel investing in Thailand since 2013, I think was my very first investment.
Interesting.
And today I have about 14 companies in my portfolio. And my average ticket size ranges anywhere between $10,000, and the largest I've ever deployed was $100,000. So it kind of gives you an idea of terms of my angel investing. For the angel investing as I do, that there's no specific theme. It's more about the opportunity. And do I believe it's something that I'm interested to invest into? And is it a founder that I think will really take this forward and drive it to the goals of success?
Interesting. It's been quite a journey so far, and I'm sure you're only getting started. And you mentioned, 2 countries in 23 years?
Those were, in terms of that ground the world journey, is only 2. I came to Thailand, and of course I am half Thai, so there is a connection here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But my mom and family are in the United States. And so I decided to go travel China for 3 weeks. I came back. At that time, I started dating my wife, and I decided, you know what, I need to see where this goes. And so we've been together since then.
I'm happy you chose Thailand. sticking with the theme of your personal journey, you've mentioned the roller coaster journey that you had and the ups and downs and how it impacted your family and things like taking a toll on your personal well-being as well. So how important do you feel is a good support system, both at home and as a community, in a startup founder's journey?
So the startup founder's journey is super important to try to understand how hard it is to make it. A lot of people say, "Oh, I want to be a startup founder," and my question is, are you sure? So just to share some stats first, if you look at it, 80% of SMEs fail, and usually they fail because of cash flows. And people go, "Well, what's the difference between an SME and a startup?" SMEs can be big businesses. So people say, "Oh, startup has to be able to scale." Well, actually, if you look at Starbucks as an SME, started out as a coffee shop. CP Group here in Thailand, they started out selling feed. Right? So, I mean, you can be an SME that actually scales to something massive. That's not the definition, but here's how I define it. So an SME is usually I have a known customer or known customer base. I know what my problem or solution, I know exactly what I'm going to deliver to them. I have a known timeline. I know how much money I can sell it for. So it's kind of a pretty well-framed solution that currently exists in the market. It's an opportunity I'm going to execute on. Let's say if I'm going to open a coffee shop in my neighborhood.
Right.
Now, what's a startup? Startups fail at 96% rate.
Wow.
So only 4% actually make it. And why is that? Because usually in a startup, what I have is I have an identified problem or opportunity. I believe I have a technological solution for that problem or opportunity. I hope I have customers for my product or solution. And I'm hopefully going to make money someday. And that's where a startup usually starts. And so you only have about 4%. Out of the 4% that make it, we only hear about the truly successful ones. But out of those 4%, usually only one usually makes all the money and actually becomes a multi-billionaire out of any given class. So it's a very narrow group of people that actually make it. And to do that journey takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And so when people say, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur," I go, "Well, are you sure?" And the reason is because your family is going to have to sacrifice a lot, especially if you're in a relationship. You know, if you're single, you don't have as many dependencies. But if you're married or you have children or you've got mortgages and car payments, suddenly you have a lot built up into this. And so it actually does put a lot at risk. And to give you an idea, is like from my own life, and this is us as a group. In 2008, we had the agency, we had the ad network. The global financial crisis hits. We were trying to raise money. We couldn't raise any money. So all of us, founding team, we all had to take pay cuts. And those of us with children, we had to take our children out of school. So how many people are willing to do that? Right? You have to take a pay cut. You can't pay for school anymore. These are the types of sacrifices you have to take. And it is hard. And you know what? Having a job that's just, I enjoy it. I go to work every day. I get a paycheck every day. It's nice. There's nothing wrong with that. Have a great career and enjoy and love what you do. But are you sure you want to go down the entrepreneurial life or not? There's a book that I recommend by Brad Feld. It's called The Startup Life. He wrote it, actually his wife wrote it, and with him giving commentary on it. I recommend this for any startup founders who have a partner, is take this book and say, "Here, please read this so you understand the life that I'm about to jump into as a true startup founder." Because you're going to go through all these challenges of cash flow. How do I make payroll? All the challenges we have to try to even make the business work, trying to find product market fit, how to scale it up, how to hire people. All the challenges that we find in the startup world are going to be part of your life, and they're going to keep you up at night. And those are the things that your partner should try to understand about the new life that you're taking on. Because, you know, when I had my consistent job with a salary, that was kind of nice. And we still had our weekends and evenings to each other. Right?
Yeah, so as somebody who runs an SME with his wife and is a new father, that I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
So, but I appreciate you sharing that side of entrepreneurship, because I feel, at least in the conversations that we have in our community, there's always a glamorization of being an entrepreneur, being a founder. So it's always healthy to look at the other side and how much a support system can contribute to your success or even your sanity at this point.
Yeah, one of the things that I'd advise, especially, I'd call them like the younger entrepreneurs and people are just entering into this space is that you kind of have to make a decision. A lot of, we always say work-life balance.
Right.
When you do this job, there's no such thing. And so if you really look at, my work is my work and my life is my life, then I don't recommend going down this path. Now, if you view work is part of my life and I love my work and I don't stop living when I work, then this is a good path. And for me, I love what I've always loved my job, my work. I love being in digital. It's part of my life. It is not something that I separate. Work is not a means for me to have a life. Work is part of my life, and I enjoy it. And if you have that attitude, then I think entrepreneurship should be something considered. But if you have the attitude that, hey, look, I work as a means to enjoy my weekends and go off and have my vacations, and that's why I do it, I don't recommend entrepreneurship. It's not a good path because you won't ever be free of your business. You're going to be very, very inundated on the day-to-day stuff until you can exit the business, which you have a very, very small opportunity or very low chance of success of actually exiting.
Yeah, that's an interesting framework to look at things and whether one should approach entrepreneurship or stay away from it. So thanks for that perspective. Now, I'm latching on to something that you mentioned a couple of times is your background in marketing and setting up an agency and things like that. And there's a personal agenda behind this question because I run a marketing company that focuses on startups and small businesses.
Yep.
So this is more of a question for me than the audience's. What advice do you have for somebody who is doing marketing for startups in 2024?
Goodness, to be honest, I've been so far out of the game now. I'm not sure that I have good advice any longer. I haven't really gone deep into the digital marketing or marketing space for quite some time now. I think in terms of, as an agency, I think the niche that you're in, particularly in B2B SMEs, these are a really important niche to be in. They're very difficult. B2B marketing is the hardest segment of marketing. Like if we're doing like B2E, so big enterprises, we kind of know who they are. We know how to approach them. B2C, we know building brands, it becomes very clear. When it's B2B, and particularly in the SME space, it's definitely challenging. Right. But I think it's important, and there's a massive need there. So my advice would be to understand the niche that you're in and try to dive deep into that niche of types of companies that we're looking for. Right. When you try to go too broad, because it's such a specialized area, that you really need to understand some depth and understand, okay, what's the segment? Who are the people that we're really going after, right? Let's say if my customers are restaurants in Bangkok, what type of restaurants? Are we looking at high-end restaurants? Are we looking at street stalls? There's a massive gap between those, and to be able to answer all of those would be very difficult. But if I know, actually, I'm not looking for the absolute high-end Michelin star restaurants, but I am looking for those with some size, but maybe not the top-tier biggest chains, but maybe the type of restaurant that has 2 to 5 locations. Right. So then suddenly you get your target and you start to define your target audience of who you're trying to help and who you're trying to answer the question for. So that's just one example of how I try to think of it and try to frame the target customer that I have in my mind and try to answer that target customer's questions as best as I can.
Interesting. There's definitely some food for thought for me there. So I'll do some soul searching on my drive back home.
Well, I think, if we just drive a little bit into your business and we think about in that target audience, in that target group, trying to understand what are their challenges, everyday challenges, and how do we answer that? Right. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, we come up with our own answers to those questions and we don't spend enough time with our customers. We think we have the answer. My advice is be very humble. Don't come up with the answer. Go find out. Ask your customer that question, and then you're going to learn really quickly because they're going to tell you how the problems that they have, or like even the idea that we had about how to solve it for them, how we're wrong. And by the way, that was true in Kaidi. Every time we had an idea, we do design, we try to come up with an answer for any of our customers. We were always wrong the first time. Right. And it hurts. And it, as a founder, as a designer, as a product person, it hurts your ego. It hurts your pride that you just get it wrong. It's not what the customer needed, but you have to have that humility in order to do it right. I think that applies even for your business as an agency, like trying to get it right for the customer. Right.
Thanks for that. There's definitely some valuable insight there that I'm going to hopefully implement in my business and get back to you with findings. I think maybe taking a step back and zooming out a little bit. So we've talked about your journey. I've asked a selfish question already. But you've obviously chosen Thailand as your hunting ground for quite some time now. So what do you have to say about the opportunities and challenges that you found were very Thailand specific in your journey? So if you can maybe shed some overarching light about the nuances of the Thai market.
How long do we have on this podcast, Bate? That's a broad question.
Sure.
So there's definitely structural issues at the point of view of the greater Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
There's other issues of which you have to understand how Thailand operates.
Right.
So I guess based on the audience that you have, if we look from an outside point of view, what are the challenges in Thailand? A lot of people assume that Thailand has the same challenges as the rest of greater Southeast Asia.
Right.
And the truth is we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, things like unbanked, we don't have a problem with unbanked people.
Correct.
We are underbanked. That is true. There are a lot of products are not available to the lower end of the market that should be available. So really understanding some of the scope of where does Thailand fit economically, et cetera. So there's definitely challenges in there. If you look at the bigger picture of GDP, we are the slowest growth GDP country of the last 25 years of all of ASEAN.
Wow.
We've averaged 1.75%. We had the massive jump in GDP growth from 1988 to 1997. And so since the Asian crisis, we haven't seen that massive growth, but we do have a strong dynamic economy that's quite large. And if you look at the GDP per capita, quite very strong.
Right.
It just hasn't had the growth. So these things have definitely hampered some of the investment into the country. Where we've seen a lot of challenges from a startup point of view is we haven't had the money inflow like other countries have. And part of it is because of the GDP problem. Part of it is also because of the language barrier.
Right.
We have a closed language in Thailand. And so it's very hard for foreigners to understand it. Whereas our script is in Thai, everything's done in Thai, and we're very, very closed in that way. Those have also caused challenges for the country, for the startup world. Now, that being said, if you look at the flip side of this, we also, foreign investment in the areas like automotive is huge. We're the largest automotive manufacturer in Southeast Asia. We've got things like hard drives. We've got all kinds of tech that's being produced here. So it's not necessarily that people can't invest here. They have been structured to invest in certain industries. It just hasn't been well structured for startups yet. Hopefully things are changing, and we've seen some changes over the last 12 to 18 months where some of the tax laws for foreign investment, particularly in angel investing, have improved. If you're a venture capitalist trying to invest here, some of the financial tools have also changed here so that you can actually set up things like con notes. So we've seen some improvement, but still definitely a challenge from a structural point of view. I don't know if that answers all your questions because it is a very broad question.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, maybe the easier way to answer this question would be if I frame it in a way where what is maybe one reason why somebody should found a company in Thailand and one reason why they shouldn't?
So first of all, I'd say top of the list of why you should is quality of life. So
Fair.
I think living in Thailand and Bangkok, food, affordability, infrastructure, it's all there. So you don't have to worry about a lot of those things. The challenges of setting up here are definitely that if you're focused on only the Thai market, it's very hard to raise.
Right.
If you really want to get big valuations and other things, Indonesia is the one story in Southeast Asia that you need on your list. So setting up in Thailand is okay. In terms of having it as a home base, but eventually you're going to have to look regionally if you really want that spectacular growth that you expect to have as a startup, right? And that's going to come out of markets like Indonesia.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Got it. I think that is the perfect segue into what was supposed to be my next question, which is the importance of Thailand being in the Southeast Asian region and having different puzzle pieces in different countries. You mentioned a large market, Indonesia. Obviously, there's availability of finance in Singapore. So how do you see Thailand fitting into that giant puzzle piece of a very diverse yet very geographically close area of Southeast Asia and ASEAN.
Right. So the interesting thing, everybody looks at Thailand as, oh my gosh, this is gem of an opportunity, fairly mature market, large economy, GDP per capita is positive, but we haven't had that one breakout success in startups yet, which has hurt the story. And you have to remember, that not only hurts the story from a regional point of view, because a lot of investors now go, hey, look, we're kind of 12 years into the startup story of Southeast Asia, properly 12 years. When we started to get excitement in about 2012 is when you started seeing money really roll in, but we haven't seen anything really pop from Thailand yet. And so people are concerned. Then also from a local point of view, the local Thai population, we need heroes. We need legends. And that breakout billionaire story, even though people look at me and say, oh, well, Tiwa exited and he did a great job. He built quite the big brand and quite the strong business. It's still not that breakout success yet. Right. And so we haven't had that story. And even the stories that we have had, people aren't really talking about. Agoda was founded out of here, right? It was founded out of Phuket. And people don't talk about that success story. Or when people don't talk about 2C2P. 2C2P was sold to Alipay for $666 million.
Wow.
But nobody talks about it. Founded out of Thailand. So I think we still need to build up that story of success cases to A, attract investors, and B, also give the local entrepreneurs that kind of that lead, that hero, right? That legend in the market that people go, oh, wow, I could be that as well. Right. Yeah. So I think that's missing.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I'd never looked at it that way, but it sort of validates why I'm doing what I'm doing right now.
Right.
Because that was the intent, to tell stories about successes and failures and lessons along the way. So thank you for that validation.
And I think, if you compare it to a market like India, right? India, where you're from, Thailand's one small state in India, right? You take it and you compare it. You take all Southeast Asia, it's maybe 45% of the population, but it's very diverse. And also, you've had quite a bit of success in tech.
That is true.
Over 40 years.
True.
Right? And so we haven't seen that same success generated out of Thailand yet. And even in the startup communities, you look at the e-commerce with Binny's company, Binny and his brother. What's the name of the big e-commerce company out of India?
Flipkart.
Yes, Flipkart. Right? You have Flipkart success cases, right? You've got some of these other success cases, Zomato and other things that are actually really great success.
They're giant now. Right?
They're giant, right? And we've seen that massive investment into India as well. We've seen similar type of investment, not quite as big, but into Indonesia. We haven't seen that in Thailand yet, nor the success cases come out of it.
Interesting. Right? I think yet is the key word there. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
It's all a matter of yet. It depends on how you look at it. We have one of the largest global conglomerates on the planet that are founded out of here, right? You've got CP Group, you've got PTT, you've got Singha, you've got massive, huge conglomerates that are from here. We just haven't had that breakout success out of a startup yet.
Yeah, so I think it's only a matter of time, and I see the startup ecosystem maturing in front of my eyes. I've been reasonably active in the community for the last few years, relatively more active the last few months. And I can see that there's more maturity, both in terms of what types of founders are coming up and also the availability of ecosystem support. So I think that's an optimistic sign, at least in my eyes.
COVID also hurt us a lot. So part of the thing that happened, I think that hurt for everyone, but there's two things that happened just before that. So one of the things was we had one of our most important accelerators called DTAC Accelerate. That one, they decided to discontinue that program.
Right.
And the other one was seed capital disappeared from the market.
I see.
And so that was true regionally, but particularly in Thailand, there was very little seed capital to start with. And once that dried up, it was gone. And then, Thailand's a unique market where we've been, in terms of capital, has been CVC led.
Right.
corporate venture cap led. And so because of that, those corporate venture caps decided they didn't want to invest into seed rounds. They wanted to go for A rounds. They wanted to look at global ventures. They wanted to go into areas that they didn't have access to prior to, which makes sense. But it also doesn't support very well the local ecosystem, right? And so it also struggled in terms of that. Where is the capital? And the capital was sitting largely with the CVCs. And those CVCs weren't necessarily interested in investing into the local entrepreneurs as much.
True. So so there's maybe almost like the interests are not aligned when it comes to the CVCs versus startups here, at least for the short term, but
it changed, right? In the early days, I think the CVCs were. I think over time, they started looking at portfolio management and where they wanted to go. Now, I won't speak for any of the CVCs because I don't represent any of them, but I think they also had to make decisions about where do they deploy capital. And it just didn't make sense to deploy it necessarily in local market for the entrepreneurs, as much as maybe us as the industry would have liked them to.
Fair. Yeah. So, Kuntiwa, you mentioned accelerators or lack thereof, especially post-COVID. And it's a perfect segue into what you recently announced, which is the FinnoEfra Accelerator. Can you tell us more about the accelerator program, who's involved, who is it for, and what benefits are you intending to provide to participating startups?
Sure. The name of the accelerator is FinnoEfra. And this was set up is a partnership between Bam Hawut, who runs a group of startups, and his portfolio is called Infrastructure, and then Finnovate, which is the fund that's underneath Gongsi Bank. So they set up as a co-fund. And the reason they set this up was to actually meet this need of lack of seed investment in the Thai ecosystem. So the accelerator and the fund are targeting for seed to pre-A types of businesses, all of which need to be post-revenue. So we're looking, if you're just incubation stage or you don't have revenue yet, this isn't the right program for you yet. We are very, very broad in terms of scope. So there's no specific theme outside of no deep tech. So deep tech, the fund and the principles behind the fund are not really prepared for deep tech because usually deep tech takes a long time to develop.
True.
And then the other one is Web3 companies. To be honest, for the Web3 audience out there, we're probably not the right accelerator for you because that needs a different type of audience and a different type of acceleration than what this one provides. The program itself, we are in recruitment stage right now. You can go to FinnoEfraAccelerator.com today and go check out the program and apply to it there. We will do recruitment for the startups through mid-September. And then at the end of September, we will decide on the 10 teams that will go into boot camp. Boot camp starts at the beginning of October and runs through March of next year. There is a 1 month off for Christmas because it doesn't make much sense to be running stuff during the holiday season. And then we'll have demo day in March. In terms of the program itself, the fund does not take an equity position up front. So the program is free for the entrepreneurs. You don't have to worry about the equity or dilution topics. Once you go through the program, at the end of it, during demo day, if you pass demo day, you will go to IC. That means Investment Committee, for those of you not familiar with the VC jargon. So you'll go to Investment Committee. And if the Investment Committee decides, they will put in capital and make an equity offer to the business. And they are willing to invest up to 40 million baht. So it's quite a significant round, especially for Thailand. Like seeing that type of size of check is quite large for Thailand. And that's only coming from one fund. So in theory, if we do our jobs right, we will recruit and we will attract the right startups. Myself and there's a few different other people that are involved in this. There's Kunboy Suwat, formerly founder of Scooter, which is a messenger company here in Thailand. He and I are the program directors behind this. And then there's a whole team of people that are behind that as well that are helping us make sure that this Accelerator is a success. As program director, my job is to try to recruit the right mentors, the right trainers, the right startups, and make sure that the program is useful for the startups so that when you graduate from boot camp, they feel like you have the right tools to really scale and grow your business. What are the basic things that all the founders struggle with? How can we help you and make sure that you have the right support around you to learn and quickly transform yourself into a Series A type of founder? That's hopefully where we get to out of the boot camp.
I'm sure I know for a fact that it's in safe hands. So, but I look forward to what comes out of the boot camp at the other end in May, in March.
March will be demo day. Yes.
Perfect. So I look forward to that. But I'm sure there's a lot of learnings that the founders will go through that will help them in their journeys. And I'm happy and appreciate the fact that something like this was put together, and you've almost like reviving the accelerator setup here in Thailand.
Yeah, that's the hope, and we really, the goal that when they asked Boy and I to come participate, so Pam and Kun Sam, so Pam, Pawut, and Sam from FinnoEfra, they came to us and asked us to kind of oversee this program. I think we really had a vision of how do we really provide the tools that the entrepreneurs really need. The questions that Boy and I already get so he's always my cohort in angel investing.
Right.
So it's the questions we already get from founders. And how do we really create programs that will help them in all the basic things that a lot of times we get stuck on. Whether it's things from product management to data to AI to HR to finance to legal, and then most importantly, fundraising. Right. So fundraising. How do I make sure that I'm successful or I have the highest potential of success in my fundraising, and learning from people who've done it, both from the entrepreneur side, but also from the VC side. So we'll give the entrepreneurs opportunities to not be in the pitch to ask the VC, but actually sit with the VC and go, could you explain to me how you work and what you think and why you guys think like that? Because to be successful in your pitch, you also need to understand that person's point of view and why they're responsible for a chunk of money that is not their money, it's somebody else's money, and they've got to be very responsible about it and why they make the decisions that they make. So hopefully all these tools that we give the entrepreneurs will help them be successful as they continue to grow their businesses after the program.
Interesting. So that's I think a healthy way to provide a very well-rounded set of information to the founders who can then use it in their not only fundraising, but like you mentioned, a lot of other business verticals that they might need support in.
Yes.
Now, I will break down my last question into two parts. First, sticking to the FinnoEfra.
Yes, FinnoEfra Accelerator.
Accelerator. Thanks for that. So what advice do you have for founders who are currently applying? And how do you think they can make the best case for themselves to be selected in the 10 that will actually go through? Yeah,
so the first thing is go online and go search everything you can about building good pitch decks. So a lot of founders at this stage, maybe you haven't ever done a pitch deck properly before. And remember, your pitch deck is not a sales deck. So I think my first piece of advice is understand that your sales deck is for your customers. This pitch deck is for investors. So you got to explain to people why. There's standard structures in that. You can look it up online, so we don't have to bore anybody on this podcast.
True.
But there are lots of areas that you can find the resources for building out a good pitch deck. And that's where I would spend time on today to make sure you have the basic elements in there. And really, in terms of those elements, is being able to express the problem, the solution that you bring to the table, and then also the traction you have and why it's a great opportunity, right? So these are some of the bits, but really being able to express that properly and being able to sell that to an investor who says, ooh, this might be interesting to put my own hard-earned money into, right?
True. Yeah, that I think is a useful framework for people who are applying, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the second part, which is a slightly wider variation of the first part, is what advice do you have for startup founders in general, especially early stage startup founders, the ones that I typically interact with? especially when they're operating here in Thailand and looking for opportunities for not only fundraising, but also in improving their product market fits. So I know I'm sure there's several answers depending on situations, but is there one piece of advice that you feel would apply to the most to most people, or some mistake that you see people commonly making in their journey, especially during the early days?
Yeah, the biggest mistake that I see founders make is they fall in love with their own product.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care that you love your product. I care if your customer loves your product.
Right.
And so oftentimes we end up loving what we've built, but it won't matter anything. It doesn't matter if nobody else loves your product. And so my thing is, don't love your product, be humble, and make sure that you are approaching it as, I want to build this to make sure that my customer is absolutely excited and in love with my product. And that's really, really hard to do. It is very difficult to do that. Remember, I'll give you an example, like for Kaidi ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a lot of people that have joined the company and they'd be like, oh, your UX sucks, or your product is terrible, like this, that, and the other thing. And the first thing we'd have them do is go talk to our customer. Go, get out of the building, go. We'll set it up for you even. We'd make the calls, we'd have them set up and talk to the customer themselves. And then they come back, they'd be shocked. They're like, oh my gosh. And the reason is, remember, for a company like Kaidi, my customer doesn't spend 8 hours, 10 hours a day online. They have their own lives, they have their phones, and they maybe spend a little bit of time. And so they have a different expectation. They are not digital native people.
Right.
And so therefore, I was building a product not for the guy that's applying to my UX role.
Mm-hmm.
I was building my product for the granny who's 60 years old, who's sitting out in the countryside.
Right.
I want her to use my product successfully. And I want her to love it. And so actually, it really required us to get out of the building, to really be humble about how we looked at the product. And this is why I recommend for early stage founders. A lot of times we have like egos, and our egos get in the way. And we're like, oh no, I know what's best. No, actually you don't.
Right.
Be humble, approach your customers, and create something that they really truly love. And once you've created that and you can start to get product market fit, then you can start to scale your business. But that in love with my own product is a big, big problem.
I've seen that, been guilty of that myself. So yeah, that's a very valuable piece of advice. And I think just talking to the customer is underrated. There's so much talk about, hey, you should talk to your customers, but not many people are actually implementing it, or not implementing it in a way where they don't let their egos get in the way.
You would be surprised. It's actually a lot easier than you think. And here's why. Remember the basics of all human nature.
Mm-hmm.
We love to give our opinion. Opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one. So the thing is like calling up your customer and saying, hey, look, I have a few minutes of your time. I would love to hear your opinion. And you set them up for giving their opinion without judgment on your side. People love to do it. And you don't need many. What we found in our exercises of going out and surveying markets is that I'll talk to 5 or 6 people and I already know the answer.
Right.
Because you kind of get the same theme over and over and over again. We usually go for 10 people. When we first started doing this, going outside, we thought we had to talk to 100 people.
Right.
We quickly learned we only needed 10. Because once we got to 10, we already saw the problem. We already saw where we were missing it, or we already got the answer we needed. And so it turns out it's not as hard as you think. You just need to get out there and ask. And ask the right question and know why you're asking the right question, right? And there's different frameworks you can use. There's product types of frameworks, there's card sorting, there's all kinds of tools.
Right.
Down to pricing tools like Van Westendorp models that you can use. But just get out there and get in front of your customer and watch them and be with them. And that includes your engineers as well. A lot of the times the founders maybe have a technical co-founder. And technical co-founder says, oh, I don't want to go talk to the customer.
Right.
No, they need to be there. Because usually your technical co-founder can find answers quicker than anybody else in the company. Because they look at it and they'll see, oh my gosh, that's the problem. Oh, I know how to fix that.
Right.
And they can do it immediately. They can do it very quickly, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I've noticed how, especially as a startup grows, there become a lot of layers between what the team that's building the product and the actual people who are using it. So it's good to know that there's there are people out there, founders out there, who are removing those layers and providing the technical people or product builders direct access to customers, because it's like Chinese whispers, right? If you go through 7 different departments before the news hits you, you're losing a lot of the insight that you would have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, in my organization, we had a rule, which is every single person in the company had to go visit a customer, every single person, at least once a year. That was the minimum.
Wow. Okay.
That was the absolute minimum, and I expected everyone. And it didn't matter what your role in the company was. Finance, HR, infrastructure did not matter. And a lot of people say, but I don't have. That's not my actual customer. I go, everybody is a customer to everyone in this company. So I don't care what role you have. Kaidi's customer is your customer too. And you know what's amazing is when you do that and you really humbly approach it. Our team used to go out and they'd always come back with great solutions for the customer. And it didn't even matter what role they played. They could see it. They were like, oh, we don't have to fix that. Or why do we do it that way? That's really dumb. We should fix this. Right? And it's really getting everybody out there to understand that we all have a role and we're going to see different ideas on how to make things better for our customer.
That's awesome. I think that's the perfect end to our discussion. I think that's something that a lot of us should take home from, if nothing else from our discussion. I think that is one thing that I feel we should drive home among founders, especially early stage founders. I can't count how many of my own clients have been very rigid when it comes to actually taking market feedback. And because as a marketing company, I almost act as a middleman between them and their customers. So it's interesting to know that there's a way out of that conundrum. So thank you, Kuntiva, for your time, for your insights as usual, and any parting words for our audiences?
I think the only one is, like, for anybody that's interested in applying to the accelerator, we'll be taking applications until mid-September. We hope to see you in the program. And thank you for having me today, Mayank.
My pleasure. I'll make sure to leave a link to the application so that you guys can find it easily in the description below. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Thank you to Base Studio for hosting us once again, and we will see you in the next episode.